new year and it comes with the promise of plenty. The champions of the inaugural Under-19 Women's World Cup will be determined at the end of this week on Sunday, January the 29th, in South Africa. And a few days prior, the franchises of the inaugural Women's IPL will also be announced in India. And amidst all of that, we'll also have the action emerge from South Africa, where India are locking horns with the hosts and West Indies as they look to put the final touches to their preparations for next month's Women's T20 World Cup. And to unpack all of this, and to unpack all of the stats, the performances, and the excitement, I have with me Shweta Haranhalli, former Mumbai captain and resident expert at cricket.com with me.
Hi, Annesha. It's so good to be back in what is going to be a very historic week as far as women's cricket is concerned. We have the finals of the Under-19 World Cup, plus the new 5 teams of the women's IPL. But I think before we get into the women's IPL, I think let's talk about the Under-19 team and the Indian team. As far as how India's campaign has been, they were dominant in the group stages of the game. But what do you think? You followed the team very closely. What do you think went wrong for the Indian team, especially in their first game against Australia?
Yeah, this looked like a team that was cruising and they played no wrong move, so to speak, during the group stage. But come Australia into the picture, whom, mind you, they had defeated in one of the warm ups. They lost their plot, and it was largely down to the offensive launched by Australia's pace bowlers, especially Miley Illingworth. She's not very tall, but packs in a lot of pace, has amazing core strength from what it appears, and probably we don't have a speed gun available, on the graphics that we see on the Under-19 T20 World Cup broadcast, but it looks like she was cranking it up to the point, or probably upwards of 120 kph. And for a short-statured bowler to do that, I think that's quite impressive. There was Lucy Hamilton, who bowled an extremely economical spell early on and really put the Indians on the back foot, because if you look at the Indian scorecard, it was a bit of a sorry sight, save for Shweta Sehrawat, who again as an opener tried to do a bit of a rescue act, but wasn't quite successful. And then Rishita Basu and Titash Sadhu, the two Bengal players, tried doing their bit, but it wasn't enough. When you have an under 100 sort of a score, it always is going to get difficult, and it did prove so, because Australia were able to notch up a 7-wicket victory, and that's quite a big margin if you consider how the Super Sixes are playing out in terms of the teams carrying forward their points, their wins from the group stages of the tournament. And while India are not out of contention just yet as far as that semi-finals berth is concerned, but they are being pushed and pushed to the edge by Australia and South Africa. So a lot to look forward to over the next couple of days, because a lot of Indian fans would be having their hearts in their mouth, because again, as I said, this looks like a team that could go all the way, and I am still backing them to go all the way because they have a great squad. It's just that that Australia match was a bit of a wake-up call, and it came at a crucial time, too much for India's liking, perhaps. While that was a bit of a roadblock, a bit of a speed breaker for India, that Australia game, they did bounce back in style in commanding fashion against Sri Lanka in their second and last Super Six stage match. What did you make of that victory? A 7-wicket margin again for India?
Obviously they had like a very quick turnaround, less than 24 hours before they played Sri Lanka again. They were rattled with pace and bounce by the Australian quick bowlers, and one of the reasons was, like the senior team, I felt the under-19 team was also heavily reliant on, say, Shefali, Shweta and Richa to shoulder the bulk of the responsibility, which unfortunately they couldn't in Australia, in the game against Australia. But what was really heartening to see was the fact that India backed their strengths. At this moment in this World Cup, the strength has been their spinners, and against Sri Lanka, I think they backed their strengths. The wicket was also sluggish, so it really helped them with Mannat Kashyap, Parshvi Chopra, just wrecking havoc. So that was one of the biggest positives for them as far as the Sri Lankan game is concerned. But they will obviously understand that Sri Lanka did not possess a big challenge to them as far as their batting skills are concerned. So a lot of positives for them, but the campaign, I think the match against Australia would definitely hurt them.
And make no mistake that should they go on to make the semifinals, they also have a very, very potent threat in England who look like the side to beat in this T20 World Cup because they are currently undefeated
Yeah.
throughout the group stages. They've been so, and also in the Super Sixes. And it looks like they will be that unbeaten team to head into the Super Six, like the Australian senior side is in every single World Cup that we see, right? So a lot for India to take away in terms of lessons they learned in that game against Australia. Their pick in terms of the bowling attack was also a bit of a question because the pitch seemed to
Yeah.
be rewarding pacers quite a bit, but they only had Sadhu, if I'm not mistaken, as their pace bowling resource. So maybe that's something for them to think about. And talking about individual performances, as you rightly mentioned, Parshavi Chopra and Mannat Kashyap, two spinners who've really led the charge for India throughout this campaign so far. Parshavi Chopra hails from, she plays for Uttar Pradesh and is part of the Yuvraj Singh Academy of Excellence. And she did show a glimpse of the excellence she's carried into the tournament through her 4 for 5. What do you make of that haul from Parshavi in the game against Sri Lanka?
I think one of the most important things for a leg spinner is the consistency that they have, and I think that was at the forefront against Sri Lanka. She's one of the few leg spinners in India at the moment, or even in the under 19 cricket, who has the knack of bowling the googly, and probably that is one of the that can be one of the trump card for her as far as her variety in bowling goes on. But the heartening thing for me was the consistency in which she bowled. Yes, there were like low middle order batters against her, but she held her line, she held her length, and that is something that is very important in age group cricket.
All through, she's been immensely economical and
Yeah.
miserly. But in that game against Sri Lanka, the wickets column was finally a very fair and accurate reflection of her skills. 4 wickets for just 5 runs and the number of dot balls. Wow, a whopping 20 dot balls in 24 deliveries. That is the best testament you can have from a leg spinner, frontline spinner, in terms of how accurate and economical she has been. And looking forward to how India go about scouting leg spin bowling talent for the senior side. I think what you
Yes.
said is very, very important, Shweta, because while we are talking about the dearth of potent leg spin bowlers, I think after Poonam Yadav, we've not had many of them. Yes, Devika Vaidya is doing very well for the national team right now. You also have a Harleen Deol who, as Harmanpreet said, is quite different to Devika Vaidya. During the pre-series
Yeah.
press conference in South Africa ahead of the tri-series, Harmanpreet mentioned this very clear difference that Harleen bowls a lot of everything, just like Harmanpreet herself bowled with her
Yeah.
off spin. So Harleen Gill is a leg spinner who throws in, the googly, the off spinner, the top spinner, everything. But with Devika Vaidya, she's a more classical sort of a leg spinner, and you can rely more on her. But Poonam Yadav again is kind of out of the picture. So who are the next generation leg spin bowlers that India looks forward to? Maybe Pashvi Chopra is putting her hand up to her performances, and India will need her to continue that streak of performance if they go on to make the semifinals because she holds a very, very important key to how India fare in that knockouts stage of the World Cup. The other spinner we got to talk about, she was impressive during the New Zealand development series in India in Mumbai. She was massively, massively impressive in the South Africa bilateral series ahead of the World Cup. And come the World Cup, she's gone on to do everything. Curiously, she was not part of one group stage match. And saving that, I think she's gone on to say that, dear world, look at me. My name is Mannat Kashyap. I hail from Patiala. I've done it in Bandra and I'm going to do it in Benoni. And if you take me to Purchefs too, I'm going to do it there as well. And if you give me a call up for India in a few years' time, I'm going to show you how good a left arm spinner I am. Because she is currently India's leading wicket taker at the Under 19 World Cup. Shweta, your thoughts on Mannat Kashyap from Patiala?
One of the major things for her is the fact that she has a spinner as a lead coach of the Indian side, so that really helps her because I'm sure Nushin would have spent a lot of time with Neetu David playing for the Indian Railways. And just looking at her action, it's just such a simple, uncomplicated action. it's solid at the crease. She bowls wide from the crease. She delivers the ball wider from the crease, so it allows the ball to drift into the right hander and then turn away. I think that has been something that has helped her in under 19 cricket. And if you can see the second wicket, the first wicket for her and the second wicket of the Sri Lankan side that the pick caught at first slip, that was a prime example of, a classic left arm spinner's dismissal. So she's definitely a work in progress, but India would be very happy with her performance. And with Rajeshwari and Radha, she can be the backup spinner for left arm spinner for the Indian side in the coming years.
And for a spinner to have what Poonam Yadav once told me in an interview, jigra, heart, bravery, is very important. And Manat Kashyap seems to bring that in truckloads because she is out there to give you breakthroughs, which I think is very important for a bowler to possess in terms of a trait, so that your captain knows that you are the go-to bowler for her. You're the go-to bowler for your team in terms of getting those, making those inroads. And Manat Kashyap has done that consistently throughout this World Cup, where her best figures came in the group stage against Scotland for 12 or thereabouts, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at her trajectory as well, she's been part of the Punjab setup for a while now, knows Harmanpreet very well because Harmanpreet is part of the Punjab setup as well. Quite integrally. And Manat Kashyap made heads turn, interestingly, much before the World Cup began, because she is somebody who doesn't like to get under the skin of the batter or the non-striker. One other individual from India's squad whom we should definitely touch upon briefly is Soumya Tiwari. Her celebration after closing out India's win against Sri Lanka was quite something, because she let out a roar, much like Virat Kohli, her idol, and she went on to look up at the heavens, do a bit of chest thumping, an understated one at that, because it meant so much, right, to remain unbeaten, to play a 20-run innings or thereabouts, because she was coming into the 11 after a long while. She was dropped after that 10-run innings at the start of India's campaign against South Africa. And for her to have gotten this opportunity and sort of bailing India out of a bit of a precarious situation in that run chase against Sri Lanka, although they were chasing a very small target, I think that spoke to how Soumya Tiwari could potentially be a permanent part of the Indian lineup, Indian 11, as they head into the semi-finals, potentially.
As a batter, it is always very important when you're coming back into the innings to just get some runs under your belt and to finish off the game. Obviously, 60, they were chasing just 60, around 60, 61 runs. It wasn't an attack that was going to threaten them, but India had lost Shefali, Shweta, and Richa practically very early in the innings. So for her to, guide the team over the line would have done her confidence a world of good. To be honest, I think India did miss a trick by not having her in the earlier games, but they've finally made amends to that. And she is one of the players who has the knack of shouldering the responsibility of the side. She has a calm head on her shoulders. And I think for the knockout stages of the tournament, the player who absorbs pressure is something that India would be looking forward to. And she is the right kind of person to bat in India's middle order.
And she came in for Sonia Mandia, who wasn't quite offering anything in either department. She's an all-rounder, Sonia Mandia, but with the bat, she wasn't successful despite getting a few chances. And with the ball, either she wasn't able to make an impact. So that makes all the more sense for India and Shefali Verma to continue with Soumya Tiwari, especially to give the batting order some sort of a cushion. How they go on to finalizing their playing 11, as you rightly said, is going to be key as they go into the semi-finals. But here's looking forward to if India go on to pushing their chances for their maiden world title in women's cricket. While India women's youth side has a lot of thinking to do about finalizing their playing 11, should they go on to make the semi-finals of the Under-19 T20 World Cup, that senior team, India women, were forced to make carpet changes to their starting 11 for their tournament opener in the Tri-Series against South Africa in East London because of an illness that had grounded their captain Harmanpreet Kaur, Renuka Singh, their pace bowler, and a few other players. As per Amanjot Kaur, who made heads turn with an amazing debut for the ages, really, where she
Mhm.
played a blistering knock, a very gritty innings of 41 unbeaten runs to set up India's 27-run victory. Shweta, how impressed are you with how India started their Tri-Series campaign despite the uncertainty around so many of their key players, with Smriti Mandana standing in for Harmanpreet as the skipper?
Very impressive in as far as the Indian team is concerned. Obviously, they didn't have the availability of a lot of players. They were forced to actually make players play who were available. And if you look at it in hindsight, if Harmanpreet was fit and available, I'm pretty sure Amanjot would not have made her debut. But for her to come into this side at such a short notice and create an impact is something that holds Indian cricket in good stead. She's done it for a long time for Chandigarh. She's done it for a long time for the zonal side, for the India A sides. But for her to actually do that at the international level, I think this is what dreams are made about. And really, really happy for her. India was in a spot of bother with around 65, 69 for 5 with Deepti and Amanjot coming together. And honestly, she couldn't have asked for a better partner in Deepti Sharma. She's a calm head on her shoulder. She's done it a lot of times for the Indian side lower down the order, and for them to actually guide India out of this challenging situation, it makes a lot of things difficult now for Harmanpreet Kaur when she comes back into the side, because now you have a player who's done that in their first game. She also provides you with the pace bowling option, and who do you now pick in your playing 11? Because then when Harmanpreet Kaur comes in, one of them will have to miss out. And I really hope it's not Amanjot for the second game today.
So core replaces core, and core brings on the core strength. We've seen the other core display in international cricket. It does make things tricky for India, but to put Amanjot's performance into perspective a bit more, just building on what you, beautifully explained, Shweta. Here is a batter who comes in, absorbs truckloads of pressure, in part thanks to her partner, Deepti Sharma, with whom she was able to string a 76-run partnership for the sixth wicket, which was India's highest six-wicket partnership in women's T20Is.
Yeah.
And Amanjot went on to make what is the second highest individual score by a debutant in women's T20Is, and a 41 is also the highest score for a batter batting in women's T20Is at number 7 or lower. So there's a lot of stats, packed into her, extraordinary performance there, because to be playing on that wicket, which wasn't quite aiding the batters, because Sunelu's the captain, it was turning a fair bit. So for Amanjot to have been able to generate the kind of power she was in her along the ground strokes, I love some of the cover drives she struck towards the business end of the innings at the in the death overs, and to ensure that she was keeping the scoreboard ticking. She wasn't letting dot balls pile on, which has been a problem with the Indian side as recently as the Australia series here in Mumbai. So Amanjot kind of became a panacea to a number of India's ills, long-term ills. How she goes on in terms of being given opportunities, that will be, one of the most interesting things to, look out as the Tri-Series progresses. She is not part of the T20 World Cup squad. She's not even part of the reserves. So if she goes on to, getting more opportunities and doing well, what really happens to her World Cup chances? Will India send her back to India? That's another point I'm looking forward to exploring. But Deepti Sharma, she should definitely have a very prominent place in the Indian Cricket Hall of Fame once she retires. Because here is a player who has gone under the radar for the longest time, and she's really come into her own over the past couple of years. Yes, there is that Rons or the non-strikers end run out of Charlie Dean that really, made the world take notice of this splendid all-rounder in Deepti Sharma, but with bat and ball and her fielding efforts too. Shweta, what do you make of her all-round performance? Because she was a very, very close shout for the Player of the Match award, which eventually Amanjot Kaur took home.
when people talk about Indian cricket, it has always been Mithali Raj, Julan Goswami, Smriti Mandana, Harmanpreet Kaur, but we fail to actually give Dipti her fair share of credit because time and again she's done it lower down the order. She's chipped in with the ball and she's played those important gritty knocks that probably goes unnoticed as far as Indian cricket is concerned. I think after in the Indian team 11, Smriti, Harman, and Dipti are the key vital cogs in that lineup that actually brings and stabilizes the whole team. She's very important with as far as the World Cup is concerned. The wicket was actually surprisingly very slow and offering a lot of turn, and India had the luxury of playing four spinners, so that really helped them. And Dipti was, I think, absolutely brilliant with her line and length, and that allows Harmanpreet Kaur to actually play another batter because she gives you the cushion of 4 overs every single time, and she also has a knack of bowling at the death, so that really helps the Indian team.
That's for something to keep track of as far as the WIPL scouts and potential franchise owners are concerned, because she is definitely going to be in the reckoning to be one of the captains of the WIPL teams, because she had led one of the women's T20 challenge sides after Mithali Raj, sort of went out of the picture. She led velocity to the final, beating Smriti Mandhana's trailblazer. So Deepti Sharma really is one of the best all-round packages we have in world cricket right now, and the better she does for herself, India will also have a good chance of doing well in bilaterals as well as world tournaments. But one player who has sort of been punching below her weight consistently in the recent past, quite surprisingly so, because on the one hand you have her playing player of the tournament knocks, winning awards, player of the tournament, as she did in Asia Cup, for example. But following that, there has been a string of low scores, and the batter we are talking about is Jemimah Rodrigues. What do you think is causing Jemimah to go through so many ebbs and flows, crests and troughs in terms of consistency is concerned?
I mean, things have really gone downhill for her post the Asia Cup, and she didn't have a great season in the Women's Big Bash League. Came back to India, played the Challenger Trophy, did reasonably well. I would say reasonably well because I know her from close quarters and I know the kind of talent and the skills she possesses. She'll be very disappointed more than most of us. She'll be hurting at the moment, and she would definitely want to make amends in the second game. She got out for the first delivery against South Africa, and when things don't go your way, you find different ways of getting out, and that was probably the worst dismissal I've ever seen as far as Jemima is concerned. So she'll probably be very, very eager to make amends. As a player, when you're actually going through a lot of rough patch, you tend to complicate things and try even more hard. But I really hope that the team management and Harmanpreet Kaur has a word with her to just keep things very, very simple. She has done it time and again for the Indian side. She's done it in the Commonwealth Games, in the finals of the Commonwealth Games against Australia. As far as I am concerned, I think she'll be one of the key players in the Indian batting unit for the first game against Pakistan in the World Cup. So it is only matter of fact that the team management goes out, talks to her, and just calms her a bit in how her performances have been.
Look, it's clearly not a question of skills, because there was this one game against Australia at the Brabant Stadium where she got off to a flyer. She got up to a flying start and looked in the kind of mood, or had the kind of momentum behind her to go on to making a half century even. But even then, she got out, in a very, very soft manner, so to speak. So soft dismissals is something that perhaps needs addressing in terms of Jemima trying to bounce back, and also it could potentially be something that has to do with the mental part of the game. Is she putting a lot of pressure on herself?
Yeah.
And there is no denying that there's a lot of pressure to be part of an India starting 11 right now, because there are so many people breathing down your neck, and so many other contenders waiting in the wings. For example, you could field a Harleen Diol and a Jemimah Rodrigues and an Amanjot Kaur in the same lineup because of the vacancy made possible by the illness that grounded a Harmanpreet Kaur, for example, or the fact that Richa Ghosh and Shrupaali Verma are not part of the Tri-Series at the moment because they're busy playing the Under-19 World Cup. So maybe it's also the competition that is a bit of a concern in terms of how long a rope can be given to a player. Here's assuming that
Yeah.
conversation is happening between the team management and a player of caliber of Jemimah Rodrigues' caliber, because she is a big tournament player. She can deliver in big matches, as we've seen
Yeah.
in the Commonwealth Games as well. So here's a player who is perhaps trying to clear a lot of cobwebs in her head, and once she is able to do that, maybe she'll bounce back with another player of the tournament performance. And what better a platform to do that than the World Cup, right? So if
They-
that is the pattern or trend we are trying to chalk with Jemimah, so maybe she'll go quite lukewarm in the Tri Series, and who knows? Here come the World Cup, she'll be all guns blazing again and taking Mumbai and Cape Town by storm. Here's looking forward to how that trajectory,
yeah.
that
I
narrative
think
arc ends up.
one of the best things for the team management or Harmanpreet to just go and tell her would be bat 20 overs. You know, forget, irrespective of your strike rate or anything, we want you to bat for 20 overs because I've seen her from close quarters playing for Mumbai, and if she goes on to bat for 20 overs, I'm pretty sure the strike rate would be up at 130, 135. So, and the more number of balls you face in a match situation, you can face thousands of balls in the nets, but come the match situation, I think it is completely different. And if she goes on to play, say, 2 3 innings where she's batted for 20 overs, it will do her confidence a world of good.
And the kind of assurance she provides in
Yeah.
another department, and that is fielding, is also going to be key. But unless she obviously delivers in a primary skill, it's going to be difficult for the team management, as I said, to keep giving her the longest rope when you have so many other players putting their hand up. So here's looking forward to just following the trajectory of Jemimah's performance over the next few days, weeks, and months, because again, here's another player who's likely to go for big money at the women's IPL, but is also a future captain in many ways.
Yeah.
But how she performs and how she's able to address this inconsistent streak that has been a fixture of her career, much as it has been the case for Harmanpreet. Even, you know, if you look at Harmanpreet's career for the
Yeah.
longest time, until say the 2019 2020 sort of phase, Harmanpreet has struggled with consistency, and you know, she too has been that big tournament player, but not being able to churn out runs match after match or tournament after tournament. So maybe it's a streak of legends. What do we know? But it has to be addressed very very quickly by Jemimah Rodrigues if she has to put her hand up for a slot in the 11 for the World Cup. But finally, how do you reckon the Tri Series is shaping up in terms of how India could take away a lot of learnings, because the West Indies have started off with a defeat and South
Yeah.
Africa still look quite formidable. Marizan Cav, Sunelus, so many of their players are very much in form, and their pacers are also a force to reckon with. In terms of how India finished their campaign, what do you think should be their primary, lookout?
I think as far as the World Cup is concerned, this Tri Series is more like a preparation for them for the upcoming World Cup, and they would want to tick most boxes there. And I was very surprised with the wicket. To be honest, it was really really slow. So India would definitely be aware of the fact that this is not the same kind of wicket that we'll expect in the World Cup. So they would want their seamers to contribute more. Unfortunately, Pooja was not available. Shikha Pandey was not available for the first clash. So, as a team management and probably Harmanpreet Kaur, they would want these two players to actually have some overs under their belt in match situation, and that is very important for the Indian team if they have to succeed at the highest level in a world tournament. Their bowlers need to pick up wickets, and their pace bowlers, if I can say, their pace bowlers need to fire, because South African conditions will offer you a lot of seam, bounce, pace, and their pacers will have to be at the forefront. India is known to be spin dominant nation, but it's time for the pacers to actually step up in South Africa.
Can India's pacers indeed step up in South Africa, because they have a few very important weeks staring them in the face, and how the spinners play that supplementary role of perhaps even that of a protagonist, will also go on to determine how they fare in that World Cup and whether they are able to, go over the final frontier this time around, whether they are able to make the finals, because it's going to be a competitive tournament going by how the other teams have been gathering force in their preparatory exercises as well. We'll keep an eye out on that until next week. Keep watching everything that we put out, dear viewers, from What's Up with Women's Cricket. And here's looking forward to an action packed week and seeing who the eventual winners of the inaugural Under 19 Women's World Cup is.